Nick, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we begin, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed the film. It was incredibly impactful, obviously in terms of Adi's story and his impact, but also in the way that you captured his spirit and tenacity. And so congratulations on that, because it really is a standout.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means a lot. So great to finally get it out into the world after so many.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with Adi and came to tell his story?
Yeah, happy to. So I met Ady in 2018, right after he had confronted Jeff Flake. And the way that I met him was pretty serendipitous. It was in the role of making film, but not in the sense of being a documentary filmmaker. I run a production company called People's Television, and we make short films for branded causes. So we work for Black Lives Matter, we work for Greenpeace, we do all kinds of work that lives at the intersection of nonprofits and social movements and storytelling. And so I got a call from Liz Jaff, who viewers will recognize as Adi's partner in crime, who met him in this unbelievable coincidence on an airplane. And she and I have mutual friends in common, and she reached out saying she'd heard about us, needs a short launch film made for the Be a Hero campaign. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. This guy's got a cool story, and flew out to Santa Barbara to make what I thought would be a 2-minute kind of promo video for him. And I sat down with Ady. I thought it was going to be this kind of like sad, somber thing. He was already in a wheelchair at that time. And within 5 minutes of the camera rolling, you see in the film, he takes his shirt off and he says, well, let's do the interview topless.
Right.
I just realized he was the funniest and most kind of, not just resilient, but he found this way to turn what had happened to him into this weapon. And that, I think, was so resonant to me, not just because of the politics, but because of this idea that I think all stories try to find is how do you turn a tragedy into something hopeful. And so it really epitomized what the kinds of stories I want to tell. And what's interesting, Joe, is that I had to ask him at the end of that first interview, hey, look, we're making this short promo video together for your campaign. I wish it all the success in the world, but I think there's a bigger story here. And the reason that question had to be asked then is because he only had about 6 months left to speak when I met him. And there was a clock immediately. And that accelerated what would normally be the kind of documentary filmmaker's long courtship process.
Sure.
But fortunately, he was very receptive to that. And just about a month later, we began in earnest, my producer Amanda and I, to make the film.
That's incredible. His sense of humor certainly does come through in the film. Made me laugh quite a few times.
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on that, I hope that comes through. I mean, the humor is really critical to not just, why I wanted to make the movie, but also I think how Ady has dealt with this diagnosis. And I think there's a real metaphor between the use of humor as a tool for perseverance and between the work that he's doing of taking these kinds of stories and personal tragedies and turning them on their head. That's what he does with his humor. And so that had to be, it's kind of part of the politics of the film.
As an aside, it definitely is a film. And I guess Adi's story is such that it really makes you reflect on yourself and, not only how you're using your time. And I say you, meaning like for me, how I'm using my time, but also how I react to situations and seeing how he is able to channel everything that's happening into such a noble cause. And not only the cause of healthcare, but you see through the film multiple times where the dynamic shifts a little bit. When the Brett Kavanaugh accusers come out, and he even says like he knew he had to take a back seat at that point. It really is just quite refreshing and also heavily impactful.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad. I have no question in there, but I appreciate that. We're happy to comment on these scenes and why, what we were trying to say. But I'm glad that resonated with you. And I will say, Ady's story is framed around healthcare, but the reason that part of the film was so important is because it showed that this issue and the type of activism he's doing is bigger than one issue. It transcends a variety of struggles that we're dealing with.
Absolutely. In the film, you do such a masterful job of balancing and capturing Adi, the person, with his health challenges and his family life, as well as Adi, the activist. Can you talk a little bit about striking that balance in the film?
Yeah, that balance I think informed every single choice in the edit. That balance is really part of the message of the film, which is that the personal is political. And so even the scenes with Carl, the scenes with Rachel, where they're discussing how to care for Carl, those scenes are part of the politics of the film. There's this famous, I don't know if it was Cornel West who said it first, that um, justice is in public what love is in private. This idea that justice and social issues are the way we care for each other as a larger group than the family. And so the way we take care of our family and the people closest to us is then carried into how we, how our public institutions run, and whether we put that love into the way we care for each other as a society, whether that be through healthcare or through a real robust democracy that Adi's always fighting for. And so for me, the personal scenes are political in this subtle way. A, because they reflect policy, right? Is Adi going to have time to spend with his son? Does Adi need to go away and get on the road? Because of the way legislation impacts people's lives. And of course, that's what Adi's doing on the road, is empowering other people, sick people, people with disabilities, people who fought different kinds of injustices, and empowering them to tell their stories. And of course, as you pointed out earlier, that's what they do with the sexual assault survivors. During the Kavanaugh hearing, they come to DC to tell their very personal, intimate stories. Tracy Corder, who leads the bird dog trainings, which is that tactic that they use in the film, she says, which I think is very poignant, that everybody is an expert on their lived experience. You don't need to be a policy wonk to know what you've been through and the way that policy has affected you. And that your experience is therefore empowering for you to be part of the civic process by sharing it. So yes, we cut that very carefully together, but I hope that those larger issues are reflected in that balance.
Absolutely. And you kind of just touched on this, but I think one thing that Adi does very well in his activism, and it definitely comes through in the film, is he humanizes the issues that are being discussed or debated and really connects with people. I think that's his personality, it's, his intent, and it's also the humor, as we talked about. But I guess I'm just wondering, in terms of your time with Adi and his team, his family, what was that impact like for you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something I've been reflecting on a lot now that we're in the stage of really getting it out into the world. It was quite a journey of almost releasing it last year during the pandemic, and then we decided to keep working on it, which I'm really glad that we did. And it's now really coming out in a big way and on multiple platforms, which is exciting. And it has been a very personally emotional journey. I think no documentary filmmaker can be totally objective from their relationship to the subject. I consider Adi a really good friend of mine now, and so seeing anybody that you care about go through ALS,
Yeah.
really difficult. And so a lot of this film is really, I tried to make it objective and journalistic, but on the other hand, it's also sort of a love letter to him, to his family, and to the other activists doing the kind of work that they're doing. So I think making the film was really difficult, but seeing it come out into the world has been really cathartic. And Adi didn't get to come to Tribeca, but it is going to be released in theaters, including in LA. And that's we had him deliver a really sweet video message at Tribeca, where he was up on the big screen, where Adi spent a lot of his time in New York when he was a young organizer. And what we're really excited about is in August, we're going to do some events in LA and Santa Barbara, where Adi is, and he'll be able to come out and see his name up on the big screen, see his face up on the big screen. And I'm hoping that experience is rewarding for him.
How do you, as a documentarian, a filmmaker, the crew in general, how do you keep a clear head about you when you're, in this process, when you're filming? Because watching this, there's a number of scenes where I was an absolute sobbing mess. One of them in particular is his son Carl places a cracker with a spread or something in his mouth at one point, and I lost it. But how do you carry through that? I mean, just in order to deliver the product that you did and the incredible story that you did, I can't imagine sort of the the process and the control that you have to have in, you know, processing what you're seeing.
Yeah, there's a couple ways that I think to tackle that. I mean, the one thing I will say about that scene in particular is, if you go back and look at it, I was holding the camera for that, and if you watch it again, you'll notice it's almost entirely out of focus, and that's because I'm not a very good cinematographer, but also because I was, really in there in that moment watching that happen, and it was hard to both look through the viewfinder and experience that at the same time, and so it certainly didn't help my camera skills. But that said, one real important solution, and something that is important for me to share, is just we had a really great team on this project that supported me in a lot of ways. Namely the producer Amanda, who was also a cinematographer and was in there with Ady a lot of the times shooting scenes. We had 4 other great cinematographers who, because we shot over so many years and so many shoot days, we'd often just send them to Ady's house to capture important moments. And so we also have great executive producers on the team that helped us kind of shepherd the creative process. And so I certainly could not have done this alone. And I think navigating those personal dynamics is important, just to have a great team to bounce off of, and also discuss some of the ethical implications of what we should shoot, to think about what's the narrative here, to anticipate what the story was going to be, which we didn't know, and how to be prepared to follow that story. We really tried to make the film as narrative in its quality, meaning I wanted it to play as much as possible like a fiction film. There's very few talking heads. There's not really anybody reflecting. There's no experts saying anything to the audience. And so that required a certain degree of kind of like teamwork, foresight, a lot of shooting. And I think all of that is what makes the film work.
Absolutely. How's Ady doing today?
He's doing good. He is very active in his work. And so one of the goals that I have for this film is, of course, to get it out as widely as possible and have people have this inspired emotional reaction, but also to really understand and support Ady's work. So Ady still runs the Be a Hero Fund, which viewers can check out at beaherofund.com. And he's really committed to winning, amongst all of the issues he's fighting for, and just building a stronger democracy and protecting our democracy. There's a specific piece of legislation that Ady is really dedicating his years around, the years that he has left, which is Medicare for All, the most kind of promising path to a universal single-payer healthcare system. And so Be a Hero Fund is focused on that, and it has really amazing support. He's been interviewing celebrities and politicians. He just did a virtual interview with Nancy Pelosi, with Senator Senator Padilla in California, both of whom he's pushing and in many ways been successful in moving them towards this issue. So I really think that Ady's he does amazing things in the film, but I think actually his most important work is going to be ahead of him. Carl is 5 now, I think, and Willow is 2 or almost 2. Rachel got to come to the Tribeca premiere, which was really sweet, but she left the kids at home in Santa Barbara. And so, they're doing great. And I think Carl is coming to have a better understanding as he gets older of Ady's illness, and finding new ways to navigate that. You see that begin at the end of the film, but as Carl gets older, I think that's improved. But definitely encourage folks to follow Ady directly and hear his great work, because he's out there. He's still fighting.
That's excellent. So good to hear. Any fun memories that you had from shooting? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the whole shoot was really this like kind of road movie, where we went from California to Maine. We got our own RV and we followed Ady's RV. And so we were kind of 5 sweaty filmmakers, pretty tightly packed into this super hot summer, trying to edit on the road, follow them around. They were going super fast because they had 7 or 8 events in one day, and we'd have to try to get there before them with the cameras ready, and we're always running behind. But all of the scenes that you see in the movie of the kind of the parties and all, it was really like a group of young people, both the filmmakers and the and the activists kind of on this like amazing road trip, what might be Adi's last road trip. And so we really made the best of it, and you know, had all the stereotypical things happening, like the RV breaking down and filling up with gray water and everybody having to clean the shit up. Like that kind of stuff happened, and those memories really stay with me. And we tried to infuse the spirit of those things into the film. Um, and you know, there was so many moments also just of incredible access where I never expected at the beginning of this project, when Ady was just this kind of young charismatic father with this terrible story, that I would be, you know, at the end of this meeting Bernie Sanders and under the shooting from behind the inside Congress during a congressional hearing room, or meeting Kamala Harris, which we did in the film, and you know, having her praise our subject as being such a transformative figure for democracy. So it was really this really transcendent and unexpected experience to go from what we didn't know what the story was to following somebody I think really make a transformational impact on our country.
Yeah, starting with a short video for a Be a Hero campaign to this. That's great. What do you hope people take away from the film?
I want people on a very fundamental level to recognize that if no matter what I think Adi's story shows is it really does transcend politics for me. It's about, I think sometimes I think about this film and about how Ady chooses to make meaning out of this diagnosis through his activism, through rebuilding democracy, through this public act of love towards this country. And I think this movie also could have worked if Ady was a composer writing a great symphony, or a, you know, artist or a lawyer arguing his case that would save the country. He is a lawyer. Where I'm going with this is just that what I took away and what I learned from Ady is that no matter what circumstances are dealt to you, you can turn those circumstances into something that drives meaning and creates impact. And in Adi's case, and what I'm passionate about, of course, is social justice and civil rights in the U.S. And what I want people to do after seeing Adi's story is to become active citizens in our democracy, to vote, to bird dog, to confront politicians about the issues that they care about. But it doesn't just have to be that. You know, it can also be about the way you treat the people in your life, the way you make meaning out of an illness, out of the death of a loved one, how you turn a tragedy into a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible, and it certainly does come through, that you know, that being a huge part of the film. You mentioned bird dogging. I really do hope one day I want to see that the clip of the bird dog training just go viral, because that was such a neat piece to see, the actual training of the individuals and the practicing of how you're going to bird dog, because that is, hey, that's how you make an impact, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. And one thing that I really love about it from a filmmaking standpoint, and one thing I think is really at the core of the film, is what they're doing is they're training people to be storytellers, and they're actually training them to be filmmakers, because there's two parts of the bird dogging. There's the confrontation, and then there's the cell phone video that captures that confrontation and that shares it online. And so, yeah, they're not making feature films, but they're using media and storytelling as a tool for social change. And that's what we're doing as documentary filmmakers, or narrative filmmakers as well. And so that to me really resonates with me as a filmmaker, is to empower people to tell stories. And that's really what's at the heart of bird dogging. And those tools have become very accessible to people now. And I'm excited about the future of that.
Well, Nick, this is a film that I think is incredibly important. It's moving, it's impactful. It is one that I will recommend to absolutely anyone I can to watch. I want to thank you for taking the time today to chat with me about it. And again, congratulations on the film and finally getting the release.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. It will be in theaters nationwide in August by Greenwich Entertainment. Our distributor is a distributor of Free Solo. And then in January, it will be on PBS nationwide on PBS POV.
I was just reading about that. That's such a great pickup.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if people really come out to theaters in August after everything we've been through, and see how our cinema culture survives and thrives.
I think it's coming back. I think films like this are going to help it do so. So thank you so much. And we'll hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis.
Take care.